Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, I'll be making another argument for the reliability of Islamic historical records and Hadith preservation. Mainly, this argument will be from the reliability of Islamic military historical records. Now, most of the content I'll be using in this video, right, I've gotten from a military historian named Russ Rogers from his book on Generalship of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, that book has a lot of weird theories, right? But it makes very strong arguments for the reliability of Islamic historical records, and it refutes the revisionist and Orientalist scholars. Let's get started. Now, here's the basic logic of the argument. If our historical records are made up, right, there would be logistical problems in them, and those logistical issues will not match what would be expected. What do I mean by logistical issues? Like in matters of military, how quickly a country or a city can be taken, how many sheep are needed for a particular mission, how many people would be sent there. These things, if these records are being later made up, would be very unlikely, would be very difficult to get right. Yet, as I later show in the reference, the scholar admits that Islamic historical records gets this right, and this is a proof for its reliability because it's unlikely to be made up, extremely unlikely. Now, in this video, I won't be able to go into the logistical details, right, because I don't have enough references for that. I'll go into a second point regarding military historical records, which will be the main focus of this video. Basically, that no one would make up these records in the way that they are. Now, I'll just go through a few points why this point works, right? If the historical records are made up, they would be made up related to matters of propaganda, right? These records are not like that. These records are actually the opposite of how things would be done for propaganda's sake. Now, first I'll just read what the scholar says, then I'll go into some of his examples, right? Within the context of starting from the sources largely accepted as genuine within the Islamic movement, I depart from the approaches outlined by Donner, this is a revisionist scholar, by accepting the received collections of Hadith literature, particularly regarding the military campaigns and operations. This naturally places my approach in contrast to the tradition critical approach, which sees much of the Hadith literature as late date forgeries. The reason for my acceptance, listen to this, is both internal and is based on logistical analysis of the events. In this context, forgeries would not have been able to match anecdotal recollections to the realities of the logistics involved. Right, this is from Generalship of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by Russ Rogers, pages 16 to 17. Now, I'll just go into a few examples why this is the case, right? Why the point about why these records wouldn't be made up like this. The resistance in Makkah, these are some of the points the scholar makes. The resistance in Makkah and Medina, right, would not have been highlighted like it is highlighted, extremely highlighted in our historical sources. Think about it. Is the point he's making that if Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is supposed to, like Makkah and Medina are supposed to become centers of Islam, right? It wouldn't be favorable to Islam to depict these places as being highly resistant to Islam. And if there was resistance, it wouldn't be highlighted. But in our historical records, these things are not reflected. If people are making it up, or right, cherry picking things or ignoring things that were unfavorable for us, they would not include these things or neglect them or tamper them. But this is not what happened. This is a huge proof of reliability of Islamic historical records. Makkah would not have been conquered by Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he would have instead merely returned to the acclamation of the people, right? Think about this: when America and other countries they invade a country, they want to portray themselves as being liberators, right? But that's not what happened. This is how propaganda is done, but this is not what happened in our historical records. Although the Makkah was easily taken, but it wasn't due to them accepting Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a liberator. It was because of force, right? Muslims were so strong at that time, the Makkans were unable to resist Islam and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another proof for reliability of Islamic historical records. Third point, Instances where Muslims are ambushed and defeated would have been glossed over or disappeared altogether. Again, this does not happen in our historical records. We keep these things. If we were dishonest, or we were cherry picking, or we were not sincere, it would be very easy to remove these things. But Muslims did not do that. They preserved the things that favored us, and they preserved our victories. They preserved our defeats, and this is a huge proof for reliability of Islamic historical records. More than that, there are basically a few military cases, like cases of assassinations in Islamic historical records, right? If someone is just making it up or writing, right, it would be just written this way: one person read, he assassinated easily, and they came home, right? But this is not what happened in our historical records. The way, for instance, the assassination of Ka'b bin al-Ashraf is written, right? It's not one man killing him easily. It's three people struggling to do so, and in another assassination plot, the same thing happens. Fifth thing, Hazrat Abbas Raziallahu Anhu, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's uncle, would be transformed into a full-fledged believer from the start, right? If people claim the Abbasids or Umayyads made these records up, right? Why would Hazrat Abbas Raziallahu Anhu and Hazrat Muawiyah Raziallahu Anhu be so late comers to Islam? Why would Abu Sufyan Raziallahu Anhu be a staunch enemy of Islam initially? This shows that the Abbasids and Umayyads did not make these up. This shows that our historical records are reliable, right? Another thing, there are some hadiths where Muslims are complaining about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gentleness with Abbas radhiyallahu anhu. This would have been removed from our historical records. That's not the case. Next point, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not have been surprised at Badr. This is our historical record that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was surprised. But if Muslims are making up, right, for sake of propaganda, why would they have this? Why won't they have him being basically not surprised? He would have known about the battle initially, but that's not what happened. Another proof, and this is not something that scholar said, this is something I thought of, right? Basically, in our historical records, in Ghazwa Khandaq, like Ghazwa Azab, the way the victory happens, right, the final victory, there is basically a political trick played by a Sahabi who recently converted to Islam, right, and who caused confusion among the kuffar. If our historical records were made up, right, why would Muslims make up their victory like this? Why wouldn't they just make up the point about miracles, like it wasn't a miracle and the Quraysh left, or Muslims charged them and they won and they left? Why would the victory be coming through such propaganda, or in such a way, basically in a political trick, not in terms of military victory? That is how propaganda would be done. So this is another huge proof for reliability of Islamic historical records. Now, basically I go into this again. I don't want to go into the point about how the battle was won in detail, because it will take a lot of time. But I have it here if anyone wants to read it, and if anyone has it seerah, right, they know what happened. Now I want to go into the contentions, because in that book there was only really one contention mentioned. The contention was that later historians later people who are making up a hadith, right, they could look at the Quran and make appropriate things based on the Quran. Now, actually this contention doesn't work for one simple reason. Look at the things I have mentioned. How many things can be affirmed from a literal reading of the Quran? I don't think any of them. There is no point about the political trick played for the victory of Ghazwa Khandaq. There is no point about a lot of other things that I have mentioned. These are not in the Quran. So these cannot be just made up based on the Quran. So this contention fails. In conclusion, I hope you have seen why the Islamic military records, the way they are such a massive proof for the truth, for the reliability of Islamic historical records. Because two reasons: one, logistics, which I couldn't go into details because I need a lot more references for that, and secondly, the point about these records wouldn't be made up this way. Think about this: if people are forging this, they are doing it say for propaganda, or they are dishonest. These records would not be the way they are. The only way they would be the way they are is if the Muslim historians, Muslim muhaddiseen, the scholars, our Sunni scholars were sincere and honest. And it seems to be a very strong proof for reliability of Islamic historical records. I think that's it for this video. Inshallah, I'll keep making regular videos. I couldn't make a video this weekend because I got busy with some other stuff. But inshallah, I'll try to make a video each 2 days, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. That way. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum.